So we are going to begin in a little bit. Hey everyone, we're just giving people a few minutes to get started and we will then kick it off. Hey everyone, we're going to get started in a few minutes. We're seeing you trickle in, so we'll give everyone 1 minute. Okay, so I'm going to get us started, make you guys all active. It's nice to see the people who are on the call. Hey everyone, I am Caitlin West. I'm happy to kick off our second webinar session called The Struggle is Real, Living with Arthritis. During this time, we're going to ask that you keep your eyes, ears, and minds open to the various things that you will be hearing from our lovely individuals. So, as you know, we're a company that believes that everyone deserves access to affordable and effective pain relief. We believe that data fosters knowledge, which leads to power and advocacy. And we also believe in the power of community. So I'm very excited to introduce to you our speakers. I met both of these lovely individuals at the Pathways 2023 conference hosted by the Arthritis Foundation. Michelle is a powerhouse of an individual. She's been thriving with rheumatoid arthritis for some time now, and Bart Bailey is just amazing in what he's been able to do for mindset, holistic, and just conquering tough times and being that courage to care, as his company is called, which is very fitting for this. So thank you both for taking the time to be here. I really, really appreciate it. Do you guys want to say anything before we get started? No? Okay. So, Michelle, if you don't mind, we're going to start with you, and I would love, we're going to do an arthritis spotlight, and I'll actually take this down, but I think it's really lovely just to hear more about your journey with rheumatoid arthritis. Talk to us a little bit more about what you're going through, and now I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is incredible to be able to be on and just share my journey. I have been technically diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis for about 8 years. However, throughout my journey, the doctors do believe I had it possibly as a juvenile. So rheumatoid arthritis is a little bit different than osteoarthritis. There are so many different types of arthritises. I also have osteoarthritis, which is usual normal wear and tear of the joints. That happens mostly over time and use. Rheumatoid arthritis, however, is the immune system fighting against itself. And so when people talk about having pain and such, normally just, oh yeah, my knee hurts, or oh, my elbow hurts or something, usually it has to do with using it and your overuse of it. Rheumatoid arthritis is where our immune system actually is overly good. It works entirely too well. And it thinks that the joints and other parts of the body later on, as the disease progresses, is an invader. And so it decides to start attacking the joints and eventually the organs if it gets far enough. So my journey started when I was young. I was a cheerleader, and I enjoyed just jumping around since I was really young, and I was really active. I started having a lot of pain when I was about 10 or 11, went to the doctor. They put me on Motrin. They put me on Vicodin as needed, and for a 10 or 11-year-old, I don't know if that's the best thing, but you know, they did what they could at that point. With that, caused me to be able to build up an immunity to those, or a tolerance to those. And so now that I've been taking those I am 41 years old, and so since I've been taking them for about 30 years, they don't have the effectiveness that they used to. So that has definitely been a journey and not fun in that aspect. It wasn't until I was about 25 that I actually saw a rheumatologist. My doctors just kept saying it's growing pains when I was young. They actually thought I had Osgood-Schlatters disease, which is something that can happen to pre-adolescent teens that are growing, growth spurts basically, and just pain from that. So once I was finally seen by a rheumatologist, they actually just did some tender point feeling around on the body and such. They didn't really do any blood work, which caused a lot of issues in my body, because then they figured out I had fibromyalgia. And with that, they just kind of worked with the fibromyalgia, didn't do any blood work, and it took about another 10 years of fighting for me to actually get diagnosed, seeing a rheumatologist again. getting blood work done, having MRIs and x-rays and all of that. At that point, the disease had progressed considerably, and it has now hit my organs. And so at this point, the doctors have basically told me about 3 years ago that I had about 5 to 10 years. There's not much they can do at this point. They're trying to fight it as best as they can. I've taken a barrage of medications. I've tried a number of holistic diets, different things to try and just get it to where it is. I'm a single mom, and so that obviously, you know, causes some fear, but I am happy to have a diagnosis now. I have some really amazing doctors, and they're trying to do everything they can for me. So at this point, it's trying to treat the symptoms, treat the liver disease that is now happening due to the disease process. And you know, I'm thankful at this point to have the community that we have. I work with the Arthritis, well, volunteer with the Arthritis Foundation as a facilitator. We do hold meetings and such, so that has helped tremendously with community, with being able to just join and tell my story to other people. Hopefully bring some light to this awful disease that does not show like it will kill us, but you know, when someone dies of these kind of things, it's not said, oh, you died due to rheumatoid arthritis. It's the side effects of the illness itself. And so, you know, the things that kill you are organ damage and things like that. But it is a very serious thing that can happen with any kind of autoimmune disease. So I thank Caitlin for bringing light to this, because there are so many people that struggle with this and don't understand it and give up the fight because doctors tell them it's all in their head, or they don't understand, or, you know, 20 years ago, it was even thought more so to be in your head than what it is now. At least we are getting some kind of treatment now that can help.
Michelle, you're so strong. Every time I hear you speak about what you've gone through, it makes me get so emotional, because you are just, even though it's such a tough thing to be told, you're still thriving in all the ways that you are. And do you have a really strong support system that you have been?
I really do. I'm very blessed. My parents, actually, one of the things that had to happen about 3 years ago, I had to move in with them because my disease process has progressed so much that I sometimes have a hard time walking to the bathroom, or after treatments, I need help moving around a lot. I have a 12-year-old son, and I need help getting him to and from school sometimes. I also work a part-time to full-time job. It depends on the season. I'm a merchandiser, and so with that, sometimes I have a really hard time moving after work because I've done a lot of physical activity. So my parents moved me in with them. They bought a bigger house, and me and my son live with them. And so I have been extremely blessed with my parents. My brother is a nurse practitioner, so he has helped me a lot, trying to put me on different supplements and things like that, trying to see what we can do. At this point, I have incredible family and friends, so I'm very blessed.
You are someone that I always admire, and I like when I'm thinking about, you know, this and what we've bonded over is you don't look like you're as sick as what you are, right? And how many times do you hear that? And I'm wondering if you can elaborate to this group about what that does when you hear that, and also, like, do you often find that you also have to counsel people through hearing what you're going through, because sometimes, you know, we have to do that too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's difficult. A lot of times when people, everyone tends to have their own opinion on this type of illness. And so everyone has either had a cousin or a family member or a friend, a distant relative, something that has tried some kind of miracle treatment that has helped. And the thing is, with especially with something autoimmune like rheumatoid arthritis, it is so different in each person. What works for one person does not work for the next person, and that's why this disease is so hard to handle, and to treat, because what works for now might not work tomorrow, and what works for one person will not work for the next. And so when people sit there, I mean, and you know, God bless them. Really, I appreciate the fact that people want to try and tell me, oh, I've heard this can help and that can help. And I've tried so many different things, from, you know, taking certain things out of my diet to including other things, and trying different types of, in California, which is where I live, cannabis is allowed, or is legal, in your own home. And so I have tried topicals, I've tried syrups, I've tried anything I can at certain points just to try and get me through the day, because as a single mom, I got to keep working. I got to bring in money. I have to take care of my son, and I refuse to give up. And so, you know, it is difficult when people say, oh, well, maybe if you just lose some weight, or maybe if you would just exercise more, or, you know, and the problem is, yeah, what can work today cannot work tomorrow. And we do know that extra weight on the joints does hurt, but it's not always, especially with our medications, easy to lose the weight either, because there's so many side effects on it. I'm on infusions right now, and so the infusion every 6 weeks makes me not be able to function for about 3 or 4 days. I'm in bed and need help getting up to go to the restroom, or get changed, or get out of the shower. And so as a 41-year-old, it's embarrassing, it's difficult, it's hard to even say that. One of the things that it's hard, but I find it a blessing, because my son has become so compassionate through this. I was diagnosed with this when he was 3. And so, well, you know, actually diagnosed, but because of that, he really has seen me go through so much. And although there have been some really hard times where he's been afraid to go to his dad's over the weekend, because he thought I wasn't going to be there when he came back, because my illness got so bad, we worked through it. You know, we got him counseling, we spoke to him, we did what we needed to do, and he is the most compassionate little guy now. And so I'm very blessed. Even though things are difficult, I try and find the positivity in the situations, and where things can be learned. I don't want to be an angry person, because and believe me, I get my moments. I do. I get angry. I'm like, I'm only 41. This should not be happening. But I give myself a few minutes, sometimes a day, and then I pick myself up and just keep moving, because the anger, the hostility, or any of that is not going to help me. It's not going to help my family, and it doesn't help my illness. Not at all.
Michelle, what would you say people listening to this call can do for individuals like yourself, or others, when they meet someone who has arthritis? Like what is something that we can do to be better at supporting those with this type of disease?
You know, I think that everyone at different times and different points in their journey needs something different. But overall, I think the best thing you can do for somebody that has a chronic illness is listen and believe what they're saying. Because a lot of times, even if you're trying to say it in trying to help somebody, if you're like, well, I don't know if that's really true, or I don't, you know, I heard that this could help, why don't you try this, you know, trying to push your beliefs on somebody so much can really push them the other way. So I think just listening, just feeling like people really understand that an illness, especially like this, is not just, oh, I feel a little run down today, or I feel, I've heard of, I don't know how many people have heard of the spoons theory, but there's a theory called the
Yeah.
spoons theory. And for people with chronic illness, especially, it's like you wake up with a certain amount of spoons for the day. So say you have 20 spoons and it takes 5 spoons to shower and it takes 10 spoons to work. And so, okay, well, you got 20, there's, 15 are gone, can't do anything else for the day, or I can do very little. And
Mhm.
so I think that when I've explained that to somebody, a lot of times they'll understand and be a little bit like, wow, I didn't think of it like that. Taking a shower for me can be completely exhausting because all this hair is it's exhausting and it's heavy. And so it can, be a little bit harder for me, as, where Bart might not be quite as hard, it's not so much to pick on the head.
Not
So
so much hair.
not as heavy. So, different people have different tolerances, even at different times. Right now, we were talking before we went live, and Bart's area looks beautiful and sunny, and I would love to have that because right now we are cloudy in Southern California. And with the cloud and the barometric pressure comes a lot more pain. And so what I could do yesterday at, 80 degrees is not what I can do today at 60. So allowing some grace for yourself, no matter what you're going through when you have chronic illness, allowing grace for yourself is important too, because there are days where I have made plans and I have to cancel because I can't, and I just can't move. Yesterday I was supposed to work, and thankfully with my job I can pretty much say, okay, well, I'm not going to come in today. I will work later on, or I'll work tomorrow. And I have to give myself that grace. So with this kind of illness, you definitely have to go day by day. If you know somebody who has an illness like this, if they're having a rough day, maybe just, especially now, I have a friend who has chronic illness also in Kansas, and sometimes I'll send her a little Grubhub gift certificate or something,
Yeah.
just because she's having a rough day, and I'm like, all right, I don't want you to have to cook today, so here you go. So, or if you have people that are close to you that maybe they need to sleep, because our bodies do not get really good sleep. We're in so much pain a lot of times, hard to rest. So if they have kids, maybe offer to take their kids for a little bit so they can sleep. I mean, often it's something as easy as that, or just a nice call to say, I'm here.
Yeah. The sleeping is something that I often struggle with, because I can't tell you how many times I've been woken up because of a back spasm or my hip. And then, it's like you desperately want to go back to sleep. And I don't think people talk about the chronic fatigue enough. Um,
Absolutely not. It's so hard. It feels like you've been hit by a truck because your body can't get the rest it needs. And unfortunately, when we're laying still, a lot of times I've realized that when I'm working and I'm lifting boxes and I'm doing my job, I am okay. But once I
mhm.
hit my car and I know I'm going home, my body lets down, and all of a sudden it's hard for me to walk in the door. So, we can also put our minds in a certain mindset that, okay, we do what we need to do, but at a certain point, we've now lost our stamina. And it's so hard to feel like that constantly. And if your body isn't getting the rest and the recuperating sleep it needs, which often does not happen with any kind of chronic pain or chronic illness, you you don't get what your body needs, and then it's even worse.
You're absolutely right. And like, how many times does like a flare up happen, right? And something that we've been talking about or trying to raise awareness to is people with arthritis are always operating at what I call a baseline pain. Doesn't matter like what you do, you're always going to be in some type of pain. But when you have these flares where you can't get out of bed, or you can't move your hands, and you can't like, sometimes I'm laughing at myself because I'm doing like this like whale like roll off the bed, you know? So it's like all of these things, but the flare up is also something people don't get. Do you also find that, with your own journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Flares, they hit you and when you least expect it, and it becomes something that is just hard to get out of bed, hard to walk to the bathroom, hard to move your hand to feed yourself. um I've been in flares before where people have had to actually physically feed me, and it's embarrassing. Like, even if it is a family member, a husband, a child, my 4-year-old at times, because we lived on our own, would sometimes have to cut my meat for me. I mean, and that does help with the compassion. It helps him understand and see and be a very compassionate person. But I also have felt very embarrassed and very saddened for my son that he's had to see that. And at any point, if someone's looking in, could be like, oh, look at that bad mom, because she's not, she's having her kid do this. And it's like, well, unfortunately, you have to learn how to function with an illness like this.
Sometimes I find that, like, I'll be like, oh, I'm a messy eater, but really a messy eater is because, like, you can't grip the fork or you can't, cut. And that's hits home so much because people don't get that. They just think, oh, you were raised by heathens. Like, you're just like, but like when your hands flare, you really can't hold things. And that's
No,
tough.
you drop them all the time, and opening jars, opening anything. So, like, for me, a big thing has been to keep around aids that help. So although I'm younger, I'll use a cane, I'll use a walker as needed. Jar openers have been a godsend because there are times where my hands are just completely stuck, and I'm like, I can't open that jar. And I can't expect a child to open it either. And so using these kind of things, whatever makes your life easier, that's kind of, you have to find what helps you out at different times, keep things around, and use your support system. Hopefully you can have and grow a good support system to help you, and don't be embarrassed to ask for that help, because we're told in society, oh, we have to be, supermen and superwomen, and we got to do it all ourselves. With illness like this, you can't. Mm-hmm. And you just beat yourself up if you try and think that you can.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And the support system is so key. And I think too, you've hit on so many things that people with arthritis can resonate to, like the embarrassment of having to ask for help, being out in public and someone noticing that maybe like you're tripping or like you're stumbling, but it's not because like you're clumsy, it's because your feet hurt, right? So if someone doesn't have a support system as strong as yours, Michelle, like what do you think are some avenues that people can get support for this tough time?
Often I love the Arthritis Foundation in the fact that they bring community together. Finding local groups that can help, being able to just speak to other people about this. I know on Facebook, I help moderate the largest rheumatoid arthritis group on Facebook. I think we have about 70,000 people right now. So that group is awesome. We are always talking back and forth about what helps, what, even just venting. Local groups, there can be, when COVID hit, we kind of went to more of a virtual standpoint, which is good. But sometimes meeting in person is something that people need also, just to get away, get out of their everyday life and be able to be around others. I know with rheumatoid arthritis, that can be difficult because if we pass illnesses around, often our immune system is already down because we're taking medications that make it low. Yeah. So that can be difficult. But if you can get to a local support group, or if there is not one, start one. The more people we have out there that are advocating for this illness, advocating for trying to make lives better, the better off we are. So.
Oh my gosh. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your journey, for being you, and for helping bring awareness to this community and rheumatoid arthritis. I'm so grateful for you and our friendship, and I'm so happy that we met during Pathways. I'm also apologizing for the 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. call that you had to do today, so because you are on the West Coast, but I know you have to get going, but I really appreciate you, and I hope to be talking to you soon.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And absolutely, I so appreciate your friendship.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. I am just in awe of Michelle. She's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or questions or feelings from Michelle's time before we move on to Bart? I know a couple of you pinged and were a little bit surprised about rheumatoid arthritis in itself and what it looks like. I think one of the takeaways. Oh, go ahead, Bart.
No, I was just gonna say I wasn't sure if you know the folks that are on were going to use chat, so I wanted to click over.
Yeah.
But what I don't want to, well, I want to confirm what I thought I heard, and I think you know we get so fast in our even in our listening, can we slow down? And she actually asked one of the things you said, what's the request you have with folks? And you said, and she said to listen, right?
Mhm.
And in my listening, what I thought I heard her say was diagnosis of around 5 to 10 years.
For life.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And that's her current diagnosis.
That's her current diagnosis.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure that's what I thought I heard. And, you know, as in my listening, even before the call, we had this healthy exchange. She's asking me where I'm sitting at and, you know, just full of life. Right.
Mhm.
And I'll share this with folks. You know, my father passed in May of 2020, and he was in a nursing home. He passed with complications due to COVID, but he had other stuff, right? But I also was wrapping my brain around the fact that he had dementia, and so you could see what you hear some people call the long goodbye, right?
Yeah.
And so I could see the decline. But as you were asking, right, you know, the call prior and then even during the call, I'm talking to someone that again, to me, single mom working, doing her thing. And then in the midst of the 25 minutes of her talking, she talks about a diagnosis that is between 5 and 10 years of life expectancy. And I just want to slow down on that.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, I don't think if folks are okay, just we don't even need to say anything, but just feel what that is.
Mm-hmm. Her story, as you're listening to it, was one that it's always tougher for me to listen to each time because you always hear the progression. But to hear that she could have been diagnosed earlier, right? And she didn't get x-rays, she didn't get blood work. It was only based off of what doctors were looking at. And we call it sometimes an invisible disease because doctors don't believe us. And it's her current diagnosis is a fact of the healthcare system evolving, but not fast enough for her and other people.
Oh, you know, I know that we have some other folks on, and you know, it's just the folks that are. I don't know whose cell phone BC is, but if you want to put in chat your reaction to the previous conversation before we move into to with me, I'd love to see your words or your comments. What stood out for you? And so I'm gonna click over to the chat so I can see if anybody responds. Okay.
Nothing yet. People are
No.
probably still processing.
Right. Right. Okay.
Oh, for me, the biggest thing is the strong need for validation. It was to listen and believe.
Mm. Thank you, Uzma. Yeah.
How many of you understood or thought that arthritis could also have such an impact on your life from organ shutdown?
Hmm. So I don't know if folks are typing or not, but I would say I was aware of it, but that wasn't the first place that I went to, right? I was thinking, okay, it's going to impact your ability to get things done or do things, but in terms of shutting organs down, I don't think I would necessarily think about that when I think about arthritis, right? Now, mind you, I'm conscious of the different layers and the impact it can have, but that's just not the first place I go to, right? In my thinking.
Yeah. It's the organ impact is a result of the treatment of the symptoms of arthritis. So the chemotherapy, the infusions often cause liver disease or damage, some other harms to the gastrointestinal tract. So it's the never-ending curse of, do you treat the symptoms from arthritis or do you treat the symptoms from treating your arthritis?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Michelle is so strong, and we saw that today.
Right.
I don't know if I would have been able to say that sentence of 5 to 7 years and not break down transparently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that this is exactly what this platform is for, to raise the awareness, to help people understand, and to create more empathy so that we can listen and believe in the way that we need to.
Yeah.
Bart, how would you like to? I know her story might have changed the perspective a little bit. I'm open
I,
to making this a conversation. How would you like to move forward?
yeah. So I would like it to be a conversation, and actually, you could drop the deck, right?
Yep.
And I don't know if people have the ability to respond in chat, but I want to check in and see, one, let's start with where are people kind of calling in or checking or connecting. Where are you at? where are you connecting from? And so I'll put in chat Where I am at, I tell people I am in the unceded territory of Lenape people, First Nation people, but in Macungie, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia and hour and a half to 2 hours outside of New York City. And so if you're on the call and you have the ability to kind of say where you're checking in from, and then we can move into the conversation, and I'll explain while I'm asking that as well, because one of the things that Michelle said was about being in community. And you invited me to share a little bit about mindset, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that and kind of linking back to some of the things that Michelle raised, and how can we have reframing or healthy mindsets in the midst of sometimes when we may be dealing with some challenges, and what does that community look like, right? I'll share, part of my identity, a big part of my identity is I am a African American male, and I live in an area that is 5% African American. And so when you talk about community, that shows up in significant ways, even where I live at now. So if folks can, that are logged in, participants or whomever, if you could put in chat, whatever you're comfortable with, you don't have to say the exact city, but something, where are you connecting from, where are you calling in from? Got it. Thank you. New Hampshire, Coatesville, Kunji, where else?
Let's see.
All right.
We have a
That's
quiet
fine.
group.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. South Carolina. Thank you, Kelly. Um, and I guess, one of the things, to kind of ground us before we get into a dialogue, some of you may be able to see, I'm sitting outside, right? And if I go into the sun, then you can kind of see me go into the shade. It's like, where in the world did he go, right? But that's cameras and technology, and for dark-skinned people, this is what happens, right? But I'm not sure why folks logged in, right? I'm not sure if you logged in because you are familiar with the impact of arthritis, or whatever that thing, whatever it is, whatever reason you said, you know what, let me jump on this webinar and kind of have a conversation. And I want to invite us all again, to kind of use chat and think about, and Caitlin, you saw me do this at Pathways. Think about something that allows you to be grounded, right? And so, I heard Michelle talk about community. I heard her talk about her family. I heard her talk about her brother and her son helping her to find grounding, and actually even doing work allowed her to move, right? Versus once I get into the car and the body starts to relax, then that's when I have some challenges. And so, what is something that you don't pay for? And we're getting to gratitude, folks. Something that you don't pay for, that you're grateful for, and what's your reciprocity around that thing, right? Something that you're grateful for, and what's the reciprocity? So, literally, I'm sitting in my backyard, and I have my fire pit going. It's at 11:40 a.m., and I have my two trees, right? And I can hear the birds. I don't know if y'all can hear them coming through the mic, but I am grateful to be able to sit out here between these two trees and hear the birds. I'm grateful for that, right? The trees are giving off some oxygen. I'm sitting here talking and running my mouth. And so that carbon dioxide, in some ways, is feeding the trees.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reciprocity. And so I want you, if you can, put in chat, what is something you're grateful for, and what's the reciprocity around that thing? So that includes, the folks that are logged in as well, if you don't mind, Kelly and whomever else, because once you have chat up, I can't see who the participants are. So if you can respond in chat, what's something you're grateful for, and the reciprocity around that thing? Because I also heard gratitude in Michelle's talking and in her story. right? And so I want you, as we transition from that conversation, to kind of reframe what's something you're grateful for and what do you give back as a result of getting that thing. So if you could put in chat.
As people are putting that in the chat, I'll share mine. I love being able to go out to my porch and I water my flowers and I just sit on my stoop with my coffee. And that's kind of how I start the day, when I'm able to like actually sit down. But what that does is that, I mean, it does give back, I guess, in the same way, Bart, of you sitting outside and, nature, but also it kind of grounds me selfishly in just like what I've been able to accomplish to this date. And I love that. Even if it's just getting up and going outside, right? Like, even if that's it, that's what I love to start my mornings off with.
Yeah. And Uzma, so, and I'm calling Uzma my mentee. So you could just unmute instead of typing. And so what might be yours?
I think it's similar. I really enjoy nature. I really enjoy being outside. And so I spend a lot of time. My mom would call it gardening, but I just pull weeds. And I like the feeling of pulling weeds more than I like planting things. And so I think I'm really grateful to have to like a chance to be able to dig my hands into something and pull something out. It seems very like refreshing in my soul and like cleaning myself as I'm cleaning the dirt. And I let her take care of like putting in the seeds and watering and all. So I think I always get caught up in the analogy of like, what does it mean to like weed a garden, and like, what is your intention when you're weeding something? Like, is it for intentionality of growth? Is it for like rejuvenation? Is it for reflection of who you want to be and whatnot? Or is it just like you're simply trying to get rid of something, which I don't think is ever the case. But yeah, I think the aspect of having my hands in the soil is something I'm so grateful for.
Mm.
You just hit it. You just did a lot right there.
That was powerful, right? We think of this process of gardening. If I turn the camera around, we have three back there as well. Some tomatoes, to peppers, some parsley, some eggplant, and something else. And I love it, right? My son stopped by Sunday and I had my hands all in the dirt, right? I'm dirty and sweaty and I love exactly what you said, right? If I don't do the weed part, if I don't weed the garden, it will kill the plants that I'm trying to grow, right? And so if we come back to Michelle's situation, right? Who is the gardener for her, right? Who's in community with her?
Mm-hmm.
Who's helping her growth, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, or she gets more time so that she can be with her son and care for him. Who's pulling the weeds for her? Right? I love it. And sometimes that means we have to get our hands dirty. Caitlin knows, as a result of my time at Pathways, I'm trying to have which is interesting. I'm trying to do a arthritis walk here where I live. In Pennsylvania, there's only two. There's one in Philly and there's one in Pittsburgh. And so now we have one that's going to happen in Allentown. But again, I'm doing it for a couple of reasons. One, so people get out and walk. Two, my perception is that communities of color may not understand the impact that arthritis has in some of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using my own experience and maybe projecting on others, right? So my sister has lupus. I didn't know that was connected to arthritis. And so now she's connected with a community down in Maryland, again, community, to have conversation around her ongoing process of dealing with lupus. And so we're going to do the walk. And I think some people think it's just about the walk, but we have an amazing person that's going to speak after the walk about what are some of the things around arthritis and what are the opportunities to connect and be in community so that we can weed together, right? And so, but it's funny. It's not, actually, it's not funny. It's kind of sad that we don't have a whole lot of people registered, right? And I think it's because, they just think it's a walk. It's just a walk. And how do you share what the intentionality really is? And thank you for mentioning intentionality as well. And then I just want to comment on Kelly. Kelly, thank you, right? The reciprocity you receive, the gratitude around family, love, and support. And I'm assuming you're saying the reciprocity is you give back the same thing, love and support to your family. And trust me, that love and support is also weeding as well. Go ahead, Caitlin. I'm sorry.
No apologies. Bart, you just hit on something that Michelle and I, we didn't get just talked about on this time, but there is also a acceptance when you're diagnosed with arthritis or lupus or anything that you have to come to about wanting people to know you're actually in a disease, right? So you're talking about the walk, people are not signing up. There's also this thought of me is going, what does signing up mean for people who actually have arthritis? People actually might know that they have it now. They're bringing awareness to it. What does it look like from a social perspective? What does it look like when you are saying, I actually need help weeding my garden, or I need help being able to flourish, when people haven't had to say that before, right? So this mindset journey of attitude and how you also go through a grieving process of what you need to be able to be okay, letting people know you have arthritis. It's not necessarily what you think of. It impacts you in different ways, but it's okay as well. And just because you're showing up for a walk, or just because you're in a support group or a webinar, doesn't have any negative association with it whatsoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's community, it's support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So I'll share this with you. When you were talking about the diagnosis, and I'm going to bring this around in a couple different ways. And maybe I'm still, I don't have arthritis, and so I don't know what it's like. But maybe some folks are like, yeah, I'm still dealing with this on my own right now, and I'm trying to process. And so my company, is Courage to Care. We do work around justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. And often, folks may not be experiencing arthritis, but they may experience a microaggression. They may experience being othered for whatever reason. And sometimes like this week, I've had 3 conversations where people said, I didn't have the language to deal with this issue, right? So they didn't have the language. So they took in whatever happened. It was a microaggression, or somebody said something. So this thing is now in their body. And I'm gonna come back to what Uzma said. Now this thing is now in this body, right? So somebody said something to me that offended me, it hurt me, it harmed me. I didn't have the words to address it, so now it's still with me. Or I've had 2 people say, I was in a situation where I didn't want to come across as the angry blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So I just didn't say anything, right? And what I shared with them, there's a therapist, his name is Ken Hardy, who does also anti-racist work. He's amazing. And he said something, and I saw him do this with 2 different groups. He said, I want you to understand there's something very different between silent, quiet, and silenced.
Mm-hmm.
Silent, quiet, and silenced. He said, I understand why people may not speak up. I understand, and I'm going to bring it back to arthritis. I understand why I may not be in a situation where I want to share this thing with you. However, the flip side of not speaking up, the only person that's carrying that load at that point in time is you.
Mm-hmm.
So now you are sitting with that energy of somebody offending you, and you're carrying it around. And similarly, if I am dealing with depression, or if I'm dealing with arthritis and I'm not in community or talking with anybody, I'm carrying the load by myself. He said, if you learn how to have voice in a way that honors you, doesn't put the other person on defensive, but through curiosity, maybe we can have human connection.
is creating empathy, right? Like
Exactly.
you don't know who is looking for a role model or someone that looks like them to be able to give them the courage to say, okay, I'm going to go on this walk.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not, like arthritis does not pick and choose who it infects. It affects
Mm-mm.
people of all races, backgrounds, body types, and it's so different,
Yeah.
right? So part of what we're striving to do, Bart, which we've talked about, is like, let's normalize the conversation. Let's
Yep.
normalize what it looks like. And it's okay if it's different,
Yep.
right? But it's also, I think we should pause and take a moment to say it's also tough to be the first person not to be silent in doing that. No one wants to be first. Everyone will like pipe up and be like, oh, I'm right there with you. Like, I'm happy to be second or third here,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? But being first is also tough.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a video a couple years ago. It's called The First Follower. So the first is difficult, but even the first follower, who's that first person to be like, I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'm going to go jump in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that, I had some slides, but I'm scratching the slides. But what I want people to think about is my question around, the gratitude, right? And, the things that you mentioned, and I'm going to circle this back around to our mindset. The things that we mentioned around gratitude and the reciprocity, was there anything that had to be manufactured or created for that to happen? No. I just come in my back. Literally, I come around out here year round. I'll burn wood year round, right, if I want
Mm-hmm.
to, and sit underneath these trees. There's nothing I need to do besides make sure I pay the mortgage and the taxes, so that I still have this property. But other than that, all I got to do is walk out that door and sit down. All you have to do is walk out your door and sit down. Uzma, all you have to do is walk out the door and get in the garden. Kelly, all you got to do is make sure you're in community with your family. That's it.
Bart, what if someone doesn't have the best home life and they're
Yes.
trying to find light?
So this is where I'm going to, it wasn't just my sister that I connected to the Arthritis Foundation. There were probably 3 people after that I connected with different chapters. The one individual is a woman that I've known for some time who was a flight attendant, and I knew she wasn't doing the work anymore, but I didn't know why, right? So we had a conversation. She said, "Oh, Bart, actually, I've been dealing with XYZ, which was arthritis, and she was dealing with it for a year, and I hadn't talked to her and didn't know."
Mm-hmm.
So I connected her with the chapter in Atlanta. She's building community to learn how to thrive, right? And what I would say is, yes, there are times when we have um, home situations or home lives or support systems that may not be supporting us in the way that we need. They're actually destructive. What I would offer to folks is, you know, try to find that way to reach out, right? To reach out to someone, because typically, we think that this is going to be a burden to reach out to someone. But, you know, one thing for me, and I think Uzma has seen me interact with people, if somebody reaches out, I'm going to respond, right? And I think that the humanness in most of us, we want to show compassion. We want to show that we care about other humans. I think reaching out, you'll be surprised with the support that comes back, right? The energy you give out, I believe, most often will come back in a positive way. So if you're in a situation where your current support system isn't the way it should be, reaching out, whether, if you're, a young person, through a counselor, if you're, young adult, social networks and I don't mean social media, social networks where you can connect with another human being face to
Yeah.
face or talk, might be helpful. I'll share this, and this is kind of off topic, but I don't think it is. I'm an advisor for some students, and there are some cultural things that show up. And we were talking to students this month about mental health,
Mhm.
and the presenter is in college, and she was talking to she came back she graduated from this high school, and she came back and she was talking to the students. She says, I just want you to know, even though this is my profession, I want to go into mental health. She said, when I was your age in high school, I was going through anxiety. And she said, I talked to my mother. She's first generation here.
Mhm.
I'm not going to mention what,
No, I understand.
from
Yep.
where, but she said, I'm first generation. And she said something to her parents, and her parents said, just pray on it. You don't need to see a counselor, right? Nothing wrong with prayer. Absolutely nothing wrong. But there's ways of being in community with people who have experienced this that can guide you through that, beyond the prayer. And that was her point. And in the room, there were probably 15 kids in the room, and 3 of them are first generation, just like her, right?
Yep.
And they you could see them nodding their head, like it would be challenging to go to their parents to say, I need this support. So even though it's not a negative household, but there can be cultural things that says, I'm gonna put it this way, they don't say this, suffer silently, right? Nobody's
Yep.
parents are saying that, but the cultural thing is we don't put that out, right? Whether it's mental health or certain things, and there are people who will support you. I'll just say that.
Oh my gosh, I mean, this could be a whole other session, Bart. Like my fiance and I will share, he's Dominican. And in that household, if there's pain or if there's anything, they're like, toughen up. Like you just have to like manage through it. And I can only imagine, no, that's not uncommon, right? So having enough courage to actually stand up to your family is a Herculean effort, and to support yourself. And I think it's so important, the work that you're doing to drive community and awareness throughout the ecosystem, you know?
We're trying. I know we're going to wrap up in 60 seconds. I'm curious to know, either in chat, anybody's reaction to what we've been talking about. Uzma, your response, anybody, before we close out. Not that, and this is Caitlin's thing, and I'm closing it out for us.
No, you take it away. Take it away.
But I'm curious to see anybody else's reaction. I like to hear other folks' voices before we close out. You can put it in chat.
I'm looking at the chat. Kelly might be typing. Uzma, do you want to share what you thought about this time?
Sure. Yeah, I was gonna say like the last thing about the weeding in the dirt is I think sometimes it's important to just recognize that we have dirt and that like to be able to just put our hands in the dirt is enough, because like being able to like acknowledge that your surrounding is your surrounding is so hard, and it's also really, it requires a lot of that Herculean effort to be like, okay, like this is the dirt I've been dealt, and I'm going to choose to like touch it, and I'm going to choose to like feel it, and I'm going to choose to like make it tangible instead of something that I'm seeing outside of my window or something that I'm in denial about or whatever. So, I really like the nature metaphors and stuff, and I think that like being very cognizant of the fact that like you don't have to be pulling weeds in order to be like doing the work. You can just be like sitting in the dirt, feeling messy or whatever, to be able to like be one step closer to whatever your healing looks like.
Wow. Well, I don't know if anyone should or could go after that. That was just amazing. I see why you're Bart's intern. She's like amazing. Oh.
Good stuff. Well, thank you, Caitlin, for inviting me to chat with you. This has been fun.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Bart, I really appreciate you and, the friendship and the relationship we've been building, how we are helping each other support our own communities. And I think that's so important as we continue on our journeys. And I thank everyone that showed up. I know some of us were going in and out. This webinar would be posted up on the website, and I encourage you to post it on your own social media and to share it about. So everyone have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.